Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I'm super excited to welcome Vic Ferrari to the show today, retired NYPD detective turned author extraordinaire. Vic, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So please tell us, how did you decide to choose a career in law enforcement, first of all? And then what led you, when you retired, to decide to write books?
Sure. So I grew up in New York City. I'm a Bronx kid, born and raised. When I was 5 years old, my mother used to take me to the movie theater. Around the corner from the movie theater was a police station. Every time I would look at the police cars, I was fascinated with the cops. I'd always every little boy wants that gun. So I said, there's something to this. I might want to do at 5 years old. By age 10, my friends and I used to sneak into the post office and steal FBI wanted posters off the wall and go around the neighborhood conducting manhunts.
Wow.
So I knew what I wanted to do at an early age. And by 20, I took the exam. And by 21, I went into the police academy where I had a wonderful 20-year career with the New York City Police Department. I worked in a lot of different units. I was in plainclothes 15 out of my 20 years. I worked in the narcotics division. And my last 10 years, I was a detective in the NYPD's auto crime division. So anything with chop shops, exporting stolen vehicles out of the country, organized crime, that fell under our purview. And when I retired, I was bored out of my mind, and friends and family said, you got all these really good stories. You might want to write them down. And I got into writing, and I wrote one book, two books, and here I am, working on my seventh book or sixth book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's kind of blossomed. So I'm quite happy with it, the way everything turned out.
That's amazing. So what was the first book that you wrote?
I was leery about writing about my former employer because I didn't know how it would be perceived by my peers. So I wrote a comedy, and the comedy is called Dickheads and Debauchery and Other Ingenious Ways to Die. And it's got a picture of a fat guy on a ladder, smoking a cigarette with a beer, doing something dangerous with electricity. Yeah, it's about the ridiculous things people do to shorten their life expectancy, going to Spain, running with the bulls, and things like that. And then that book did okay. And then everybody, the book you should write, especially my brothers, like, you got all these NYPD stories, you got to write them down.
Yeah.
And
write about what you know.
Exactly. And I wrote NYPD Through the Looking Glass, stories from inside America's largest police department. And it's loaded with funny, humorous stories about things that happened along my journey during my 20-year NYPD career. And that book sold. And I just kept writing police-themed books, and it's kind of turned into a little cottage industry for me.
That's so very cool. So can you share what happened? What was the reaction of NYPD when you started writing these books? Were they supportive?
Yeah, I was a nervous wreck. I was afraid of blowback. And when I got into writing these books, I said, I'm going to be telling a lot, not secrets, but I'm going to be divulging a lot of information that the general public isn't privy to. But I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I don't want to get anybody divorced, and I don't want to get anybody fired or embarrassed. So I changed the names, the dates, the ranks. I mean, do I write about people that I didn't like? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't get that close to the target. I change things around. Like, if you worked with me, you know damn well who I was talking about. But the average person picking up one of my books isn't going to know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So what was one of the most surprising things? Because I think all of us have a story inside, right? And a lot of people are scared to take that step to write their story and to share that with the world because they're afraid of either they're not a good enough writer or they don't think anyone's going to want to read it, just that fear. So you obviously got over that. But what was it like going through the process of learning to have a whole different skill set and really a second career and start putting pen to paper and writing your journey?
Yeah, well, you touched upon everything. I mean, every single one of those roadblocks that you brought up as far as, can I do this? Who's going to read it? Am I going to be making a fool out of myself doing this? Am I going to get blowback as a result of writing this? Yeah, all of the above. What I realized is, for a first-time writer, I tell all first-time writers that if you don't have a writing background and you go to write a book and you make the mistake of starting to write the book at the beginning, you're going to get bogged down. No one's going to want to read this, and you're just going to quit. I refuse to write in chronological order. I'll think of a story for my book that I know is going to be fun. I've told a story a million times. It's going to be enjoyable for me. I know it's a good story, and I'll go with that. And I'll start growing that story and writing about that story. And then when I hit the wall with that writer's block, or I think it's complete, I step away from it and I write another story. Usually the last things I do when I write my books is writing the beginning and the end. Because for me, those are the most difficult things to do, how to open a book and how to close a book. And that's going to take a lot of time. But I'm in the home stretch by that point. Wow. So it's not going to be, I've got this monumental task. Listen, I've got this together. Figure it out. So, I mean, that's the advice I would give to first-time authors. Try not to write in chronological order unless you have, a detailed writing background.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that a lot of people use when they first start writing is they'll use a ghostwriter. Did you do any of that? And then there's also all these seminars that you can take if you want to become an author. Did you do any of that work, or did you just get right into it?
No, I just got right into it. And after, what I do is I put together my manuscript, right? And I comb through it a million times because I'm going to get it edited, but I want to give the editor the cleanest version I can so he or she doesn't get bogged down in a lot of ridiculous mistakes. The better you give it to them, the easier it is for them to clean up. So if you're going to write a book and you're a self-published author, don't go to your cousin who's an English teacher. Just don't do it. It's not going to work out well for you. Pay for a copy edit. You send your manuscript off to a copy editor. They'll have it for 2 or 3 weeks. They send it back. And it's almost like getting a term paper back with like the little red grease marks all around it. Did you mean this? And you can accept or deny the changes. Right? Once that's done, you send it off again to a different editor for a proofread.
Okay.
My books go, in addition to me running it through software and me reading it out loud like a lunatic and my dog is looking at me. That's one of the last things I do before I send my book off to a copy edit. I will sit there and read it out loud. I find a quiet place and I have some time. When you read something out loud, it sounds a lot different than it's in your head. And you'll go, oh, shit, no. This isn't the point I'm trying to get. Or just by changing 1 or 2 words or changing an adjective will make the story that much more cohesive.
Interesting. So I love that you're walking us through this process because I think you're demystifying some of this process for people who might have been hesitant, right, to write their own story. So you do the edit, you read it out loud, then you send it to one editor, then you get it back, and then you send it to somebody else so that you're getting that extra set of eyes on it. Yeah.
It's funny because I'll send the manuscript off and I'm like, this is clean. And then you get it back. Oh, no. And typically, so my manuscripts are between 50 and 60,000 words, which is anywhere between 225 and 240 pages on paperback. Okay. I'll send that manuscript. And again, I run it through Grammarly. I run it through Pro Writing Aid. And then it goes off to the copy edit. And it's usually about 3,000 suggestions to change things. And usually they're right about 85 to 90% of the time. Sometimes copy editors don't always get my sarcasm, but that's fine. And that's why I can deny the change. And then, I'm like, all right, this is clean. And then I send it for the proofread and it comes back and there's 2,000 mistakes. So yeah, for a first-time author, right, you do not want to get dinged in the review section that it's got grammatical errors, punctuation errors, because then people see that and they're like, it's like buying a bottle of wine. It's like, it's the first time and the reviews are bad. Well, same with the book cover. People skimp on book covers, right? You got to spend the money. I mean, I spent $500 to get a really nice book cover produced because if you don't, it's like a $10 bottle of wine. And if your book cover isn't like that wine label, they're going to pass and get something else.
Yeah. So you try to stay on the lighter side when you're writing. You add in comedic effect and the fun stories, but also, I mean, obviously NYPD, there have to be a lot of other circumstances that you've been in. I mean, Ground Zero, and you're talking about, stolen autos. And I can just imagine that somebody might not be happy that you're trying to reclaim what they've just stolen.
Well, I do put a comedic spin on a lot of my stories, but there are dark stories in my books. I just tend not to dwell upon them. Yeah. Any cop can write a book with dark stories because you're going to see, especially working in a major city like New York. And I think that's been done time and time again. Although some of the stories are important and do have a comedic spin on it, but I tend to focus on things that people wouldn't associate goes on in the New York City Police Department, or people getting themselves in trouble or doing ridiculous things that you're like, there is no way that happened. And yeah, it did. Would you
mind sharing a couple of examples with us?
Yeah, sure. In the opening, not the opening, but in NYPD to the Looking Glass, there's a story about a cop. I wasn't a particular fan of his, and it was a Friday night. He gets a foot post, and on his post in a housing project that comes over as a DOA, he goes up there, and this elderly gentleman lived alone, dropped dead of a heart attack in his bed, had just recently died. The neighbor came to, I guess him and the neighbor meet for coffee every morning. He doesn't show up. The neighbor gets into his apartment, finds the old man dead, calls for EMS. The paramedics come. Yeah, he's dead. Now you got to wait wait for the medical examiner. So the cop, it's a Friday night. He doesn't want to get stuck sitting around with this dead body for 6-7 hours until the medical examiner comes and says natural death. Call the funeral home, unnatural death. It's going to the morgue for autopsy. The cop starts, working on the 2 EMTs. You take him to the hospital and they go, no. He goes, the only way we'd be able to move the body is if he died in public view. And they leave. So what this cop does is he waits about a half hour and a radio run comes over, same building, same floor, cardiac. Well, the same 2 EMTs are still in the neighborhood. Wow. They go rushing upstairs with all their equipment, come off the elevator, and now the dead guy that they just saw in the bed is now in the hallway. And they go, what is this? And he goes, and now the cop is scared shitless because now he realizes it's the 2 EMTs, right? And he goes, you're not going to believe this. He goes, after you left, I was doing some paperwork. The guy jumped up and yelled, oh shit. He ran through the apartment. He unlocked the door and he dropped dead again on the floor. They go, you moved the body. He's got rigor mortis. Look, he's in the same kind of position as we saw him in the bed, right? Sergeant comes. They're telling the sergeant what happened. This guy is pleading his case. It didn't wash and he wound up losing 30 vacation days. They put him on a year probation. He wound up getting transferred out of borough. But had that happened nowadays, he would have gotten locked up and definitely fired. But yeah, people wouldn't associate that someone would move a dead body to avoid working overtime.
Yeah. Wow. No, that is definitely not what I was expecting.
You want to hear another one?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Same book. The quickest way to get in trouble in the New York City Police Department is to lose your gun, your shield, or your police ID. If you lose any one of those 3, you're going to lose 30 vacation days and put it on a year probation. The penalty's probably stiffer now, but so we worked with this guy. He wasn't the brightest person in the world, and he lived in a shitty neighborhood. And he was going out one night, and he was afraid of a burglary, and he didn't want to bring his gun with him because he was going to be drinking. So he hid his gun in the one place he didn't think anybody would look, his stove. Wow. Goes out, has a couple of cocktails, comes back 4 hours, 9 beers later. He's hungry. He preheats his oven to make some frozen pizzas.
Oh, no.
Goes into the living room, starts channel surfing, and bullets is gunpowder. And when you heat it, so the gun starts firing, starts exploding, and the bullets in the chamber start popping. So probably the first shot, he was like, oh shit, what was that? The second one, he realizes he had to crawl out of his apartment on his hands and knees, go to a neighbor's apartment, call 911 on himself, and they had to have emergency service come and clean out the apartment. Gun was destroyed, needed a new stove, and lost 30 vacation days and got put on a year probation.
Wow. What are some of the craziest stories of people that you've had to go or that you've heard of that are not fellow police officers or detectives, but somebody who you went to figure out what was going on with their situation?
What do you mean as far as like just going on a call?
Yeah, like going on a call. Sorry, I don't know all the right jargon.
No, it's fine. I'll tell you, the Hansel and Gretel story is one of my favorites. So my old partner, before he worked with me, worked with an amateur magician.
Oh.
And the guy was lazy, this amateur magician, but he was a cop. And we would go to bars. We were in our early 20s going to these bars and we're talking to girls at the bar. And the magician would come over and he starts pulling the flowers out of his sleeve and the gold coins. And I told my old partner, I go, get him out of here. We can't compete with him. He goes, he's so lazy. He goes, if he spent half the time practicing on how to make balloon animals for his weekend side gig, he'd be the greatest crime fighter in the world.
Oh my God.
So a couple of weeks later, they get called out to the 6-story walk up. 911 calls for help, and the person hung up, and the call came from the basement. So they go into the basement of this building, and there's 2 apartments. So they go to apartment number 1, they bang on the door, nobody answers. They go to bang on door number 2, and the magician grabs my old partner and goes, come on. He goes, we made enough noise. It's midnight. We made all this noise with our nightsticks and our radios. If anybody called 911, they would have come out already. Let's go. My partner goes to knock on the door again. He goes, come on, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. And they leave. What they didn't realize is behind door number 2, the super of the building lived there, and he was selling cocaine out of the apartment.
Oh.
He gets addicted to the coke and he falls behind on his payments to his wholesaler. Well, in the drug world, if you don't pay up, they're going to kill you. So the super knew he had a problem. He wasn't answering the door. So these 2 Albanian drug dealers or hitmen, they did an old gypsy trick. They brought an attractive female with them. Oh. So they knock on the door and they put the girl's face in front of the door. So the super goes, oh, he opens the door. The 3 of them bum rush him. They pistol whip him. Where's the money? Where's the drugs? He doesn't have anything. They shoot him in the head. They roll him up in a carpet. They take him out of the apartment and they throw him in the furnace of the building.
Oh my gosh.
Then they go back to door number 2. So while he's going up in the furnace like a Puerto Rican fire log, they're ransacking his apartment. So now the cops are outside and they're like, oh shit, what are we going to do? So just before my old partner bangs on the door, the two guys and the female come up with a plan. They go, look, if the cops knock on the door, they tell the female, let them in. We're going to hide in the bedrooms. Lead them down the hallway, just yell in Yugoslavian. Chances are they're not going to speak Yugoslavian. Point to the kitchen. When you walk past the bedroom, throw yourself on the floor. We're going to come around and we're going to kill the two cops. And then we'll throw them in the oven and we'll get out of here.
Oh my gosh.
You know, they had to commit because they're already in for one homicide. They don't knock on the door, they leave. So what winds up happening is a week or two later, the super of the building, he had family and he hasn't been heard or seen from in a week. So they call the detectives get involved. They see that there was a 911 call down to that basement a week or two earlier. So they bring in my old partner and the magician. And they said, you know, was anything stand out? Anything? And like, no, we knocked on one door. We should have knocked on the other door. But my old partner goes, you know, the funny thing is when we were leaving, when we went to get in our car outside, there was a vehicle parked in a fire hydrant and I gave it a parking ticket. Well, that was the getaway driver. That was a getaway car. So it was registered the female. They bring her in. She starts spilling her guts, of course, trying to minimize her involvement. They lock everybody up and they had to go back to that building in January or February and shut the heat off for like 2 days until it cooled off enough to get the guy's skull and bones.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that story's called Last Night a Magician Saved My Life.
Yeah.
Because had they knocked on that door, the two of them would have been dead.
That is scary, but also the fact that he was lazy. Yeah.
Saved their life.
Saved their lives. That's amazing. You just never know what's going to happen.
Oh, no. You have no idea how many close calls you have with things that you don't even know. I'm sure. I remember one time we pulled these guys over. I forget for what or where. And one of the guys, we were searching them. He had a gun in his pocket that was cocked. You don't go around with a gun cocked. He was contemplating shooting us. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, we're getting pulled over. I'm getting ready to kill these guys. And for whatever reason, he didn't shoot us. But I locked up a lot of guys with guns. So I'm sure a lot of them thought about it, like maybe I could shoot it out with this guy and get away.
Wow. Well, what has life been like since you started writing? And you're a very prolific writer. I mean, I'm sure you have so much source material, first of all, but you said your 7th book now?
Yeah. I'm on my 7th.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So what has life been like since you moved from being in the line of fire to writing about your time?
I'm not sure I'm out of the line of fire. So after I started writing these books, they were selling, right? But then I figured, how am I going to market these books? So you can only do so much digital as far as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And I do those things, you know, with hashtags and promoting my books and stuff. But what I learned is if you really want to sell your books, especially in true crime or for a first-time author or self-published, you have to do interviews. You just have to. And I book myself and I scour the earth for podcast, radio, television interviews. And I do between 5 and 10 a week. So that's basically a third of my time. But you could have the greatest book in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of creatives find is they think that you have this creative genius, you're putting it out into the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going to have any impact.
Yeah. When I got into writing books, believe me when I tell you, like, I didn't even want to put my photo on the back of the books. That's just not who I am. I didn't want to become an internet personality. I really didn't. And if I could get away with figuring something else out that I didn't have to do these interviews, and nothing personal because I'm flattered to be on these shows. But at the same time, it's like I cringe when I see myself on camera and I cringe when I hear my own voice. So it takes a lot to get used to, you know, it's like I didn't do this to get into acting or public speaking, you know, but it's just kind of evolved into that and it works and I'll do it, you know, as long as it sells books.
Well, you're giving one of the number one tips out there so many times because I'm on the PR and marketing side and branding, and I'll have clients who don't want to talk about themselves. But if you're not willing to put yourself out there, it's not going to be nearly as effective. Just talking about the book, just talking about the product is not nearly as engaging for an audience, for a consumer, for a customer, for a journalist, as you sharing these stories and your journey with me or with the audience.
Yeah. And if you're going to do this, right, you're going to be a guest, you have to be prepared because it's not fair to the host that you come on and you're a dud. Yes or no answers, and you freeze up. Like, I've gotten to the point, like, you can't see, but I've got a shitload of notes down here with different stories from different books. But I've been doing this so long now that I really don't need them, but I have them in case I have a brain fart. But, if you're going to do this, you got to do it right. You have to be on time. You have to have proper communication with the host. Sometimes ask what are you looking for, or what you're comfortable or what you're not comfortable answering. If you expect someone to spend their hard-earned time and money on your book, you had better make yourself interesting. Because if they don't find you interesting, why would they? It's like, I just saw this interview. It's like, I can't get through it. Like, this person is boring. So you have to make yourself, presentable.
Yeah. Well, Vic, I think that you're highly interesting, engaging, and entertaining. So have you been doing book tours as well? We're out of the pandemic, although I feel like I know more people getting COVID now who didn't get it before. But yeah, are you starting to do some of that stuff? Because I think that would be a huge draw.
I'm thinking of going to CrimeCon. I live in Florida now, and they're going to have CrimeCon. I think it's September in Orlando. So I'm thinking about it.
You should.
I'm going to give your audience another piece of advice.
Please.
If you're going to self-publish a book, right, you want to do it yourself, do not get involved with these companies that tell you, give us $10,000 up front. We're going to give you a ghostwriter. We're going to put your book together. We're going to market it for you. Yeah, well, now you got another partner. And learn the book industry yourself. Do it yourself. There's a great company called ebooklaunch.com. They're an a la carte company. So if you just want the book cover done, there's a set price for that. Wow. And like I said earlier, they create really colorful book covers and book jackets. They also provide the editing. They'll pair you up with an editor that they think, you'll send them some of your manuscript, and then they'll pair you up with someone that they think would be a good editor for you. They stand by their work. They also format it this way. So for me, again, my books go about 50 to 60,000 words. That's 225 to 240 pages. I'm all in on a paperback and ebook, $2,500.
Nice.
And now my only partner is Amazon. So I upload it into Amazon. I don't touch books. I don't, do a whole bunch of author books and then go to Barnes and Noble and try to get them. It's not going to work. Go through Amazon. They print on demand. Your book is up there. You've got a link for your book. And now all people have to do is go there. They click on it and you get a royalty at the end of the month.
Nice. Now, what about Audible? Because I've heard that's a lot of people's strategy too, is getting your book on the audiobook version as well. Are you doing that, or have you found that useful?
Not yet. I'm looking into it. I've been told with my accent and the stories about New York, it would go.
Yeah.
I got to look into the cost. B, see, if I lay out that kind of money, am I going to get it back? And C, do I have the discipline and patience to sit in a room? Because I'm a slow writer. It takes me a year to put a book together. I don't know if I could sit there and read, my book and, with some director there, like, I need more from you, Vic. You know what I mean? I don't know if I can do that, so we'll see. Okay. If the price is right and I got the time, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I definitely think you should give it a shot. I would love to listen to you sharing your stories. Now, I'm sure this is kind of like asking who your favorite child is, but do you have a favorite book that you've written?
Yeah, actually, it has nothing to do with police work. Oh. My last book is called Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate. And it's got a picture of a kid in a Catholic high school uniform getting chased out of a confession booth by a priest. That really happened to me.
Oh my gosh.
No, I wasn't molested or anything like that. But when you confess one sin too many with an angry priest, it can lead to a foot chase to an empty church. It's about me growing up in the Bronx in 70s and 80s and me being a little son of a bitch getting into a lot of trouble before going off to Catholic high school. And it actually aided me immensely in becoming a member of the New York City Police Department.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I was a wild kid.
Wow. Okay. That's so interesting. And so your first book was not about NYPD. Your latest book is not about NYPD. Are you planning to write other books that are non-NYPD? Are you going back to that? Or do you have a plan? Do you think about that when you're thinking about what you're going to write next?
I've got so many ideas for so many different topics. But here's the thing. Like right now, I'm writing another NYPD themed book with short stories. I don't even have a title for it yet. That should be coming out like in August, September. Here's the thing, like I do enjoy writing about the NYPD books, but I get bored after a while. You know what I mean? Because I've told these stories before or I've lived through them. So I ventured out and I wrote The Confessions of a Catholic High School and Dickheads and Debauchery. Whenever I write those books, it's taking an enormous chance because I know the NYPD books are going to sell.
Yeah.
True crime. People are fascinated with law enforcement, NYPD, On Patrol Live, Live PD, cops, television shows.
Right.
Those books, I'm guaranteed they're going to sell. It's almost like you go to see like one of your favorite bands from 20 years ago, and they're playing this new music and like, why don't they just fucking stick to the classics, man? You know, this isn't what I paid for. So it's like, yeah, I want to write on this stuff, but I'm not sure if people are going to make that pivot and take that chance on me. Like, shouldn't he just write about what he knows? You know what I mean? So
I have a funny story about that. I actually went and saw Blondie a couple of weeks ago with my sister. She got tickets. And the first 3 songs were all big hits from back in the day.
Right.
And I was like, I turned to my sister, I said, I can't tell if she's bored, if she's doing this because she wants the money, if she's just older now, you know, or what, because it doesn't seem like she's that engaged. And the first 3 songs were about telephones and, you know, old school telephones that I know of and you know of, but most people nowadays don't. She would say in between songs, are you ready for another song about phones? And it was really funny. But at the end of the set, she was singing music that was new music and talking about how she was back in the studio. And you could tell that that was lighting her up. And she was so much more invested in that. So I completely understand what you're saying. And I love your example of going and seeing a band and hearing them play new music versus the golden oldies that we love.
Right. And it's funny that you picked up on that with her because you said she's just standing there and she's an older woman, right? And I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot out of you, anybody north of 35, 40 to be up on stage and belting out songs. And you know, you got to move around. You can't, you know, you don't want to look like a DOA up there. But like you said, then when it came to something she wanted to do, now it's like she had a cup of coffee. So yeah, no, I get it. I'm conscious of that with my writing because I'll take a step back and I read it like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, no, I really should make this funny or I should really do this or do that. That's why I think this book is taking me long because usually by this time of year, usually by April, May, I've got the book cover out. I've got a title. I'm already doing pre-promotion. Wow. And this, you know, I'm still in the editing stage with this thing right now. So it's probably me because I'm like, oh, another NYPD. I'm sure my readers will like it, but like at the same time, it's like, you know, it's me being a cop and a detective. Yeah, I guess it was who I am, but it's not who I am anymore. You know what I mean? It's not like I, you know, go around at night looking to break up, you know, with a cape and, you know, still running around looking to get involved in things. I'm too old for that shit. But, you know, I don't mind talking about it, but sometimes writing about it gets tedious, but I got to get past that.
Yeah. So I have another question for you because these days it also seems in the world of self-publishing, a lot of people, it's really important for them to be bestseller. And I know on Amazon, you can be bestseller in whatever category. They have a lot more categories than like the New York Times or some of those big lists. Do you think that that's really important these days? And is that something that you try to do with your books? Or do you think the content just speaks for itself and the people using the SEO and the keywords and the interviews that you're doing, that's really what's going to drive engagement with your books?
You're right. And I should pay more attention to it. SEO, I mean, I'm just learning about it a little bit now. I bought this software called Rocket Publisher or Publisher Rocket. They're the only company that is linked with Amazon book sales.
Oh, interesting.
But it's a moving target because those keywords change after a while. You know what I mean? So I'm always hunting keywords for my books or Amazon ads. And you want to find someone that's going to buy your book. You don't want somebody that's going to click on it 100 times and cost you money every time they're clicking on your book link because it's a sponsored ad. Yeah, but you should look into that. I mean, it'll tell you books sell, say for argument. So a keyword I would use for one of my NYPD books would be NYPD, right? Yeah. So you can go and check that and it will tell you how many books are using NYPD, their sales per month, how many clicks, but that's a whole other job than writing and marketing. And so it's like, I don't know how many friggin' hats I can wear. Yeah. And that's the least fun for me. But I know it's like homework, like I got to do it. So keywords, you always have to change them.
So you said it was Rocket Publishing or?
It's either Rocket Publisher or Publisher Rocket.
Okay. And then the other resource you mentioned was an ebook publishing or ebook publisher.
No, the company that I use to basically put my book together, it's an a la carte company. It's called ebooklaunch.com, and they're in Canada.
Nice. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we captured the correct names a couple times for the audience. You mentioned advertising. How important is advertising as part of your strategy?
You have to. I call it CPR. Again, you could have the greatest book in the world, but unless you're out there, and I do guerrilla warfare. So for me, one of the funniest things I discovered, I used to have a business selling furniture. I would refurbish furniture and I would sell at these galleries, and I would create Craigslist ads directing people to go to these galleries, right? And I says, well, why can't I do this with my books? So what I do is I go into Craigslist and I go to books for sale by owner. And then what I do is you can't drop your book link in there, but you can put a photo of your book and the book blurb. So I'll put now available on Amazon, $10. You know, who said going to Catholic high school was going to be easy? And I use the book blurb from the back of my book. I put it in the Craigslist ad, now available on Amazon, paperback, $2.99 ebook download. And then what I do is with Craigslist, I place those ads all over the country. So at any given times, I got 80 or 90 Craigslist ads. Now, every now and then someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I'd like to buy your book. And I'm always polite and email them back and say, unfortunately, I can't sell the book through Craigslist, but you did see it. Just go to Amazon and type in the book section and type in my book. So that's a free way of getting your book out there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a blast from the past. I never would have thought Craigslist would be so valuable for this. I think that this is something that nobody else is using. And now you're sharing it with our podcast.
Yeah, I just thought of it like about a year or two ago. Yeah, no, listen, I wish I had somebody helping me when I started figuring this crap out.
And what about social media? How do people find you? And is that a big part of your strategy?
Oh, yeah. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. God only knows. Maybe I should pay a biplane to pull a banner with my book name on it. But the easiest way to find my books is just go to the Amazon book section and type in my name, Vic Ferrari, and my book library will come up.
Nice. And I'll definitely put that in the show notes so that everybody can just click right there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Do you have any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share about your journey to becoming an author or anything else?
Don't give up. Writing can be fun. And then there's other days where you want to pull your hair out with a set of vice grips, but don't give up. So if you're writing a story, right, and you got writer's block and you don't know how to open the story or you don't know how to end the story or you want to make it more funnier, stop writing, call up your friend, your girlfriend, your mother, somebody that knows you well. And tell that story. And when you tell that story to them, it's going to come out differently than the way you're writing. And it will unlock an adjective or a way to frame something a certain way. The more times you tell that story out loud, the easier it is to write it down.
Wow.
Because we get trapped.
Yeah.
It's almost like going to jail and you're locked in a room and it's like, there's no way out. How do I make this friggin' story work? But if you go out and talk to people about the story, it will unlock things. Or someone might ask you a question, go, that's what it needs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And do you have a favorite quote or mantra or words that you live by?
Any day above ground is a good day.
Okay, that's a good one. I can co-sign on that. Awesome. Vic, thank you so much. This has been a really fun and educational conversation. I know I'm going to check out your books and I will make sure all of our audience members do as well. I can't wait to see what you do next. And we have to keep in touch, please.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And thank you to our audience for coming back for a really fun conversation, as well as really important information and some good resources that you can use to take that first step on writing your book and your story. Just do it, just like Vic did. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.